Okay, switching gears now. We go from one Obama White House chaotic mess to another. This one on Obamacare, where this week one court ruled that Obamacare subsidies are illegal, and then another court ruled just the opposite. Join me at this time with expert analysis on the development is David Hogberg from the Center for Public Policy Research. David, welcome to the show. He joins us from Washington.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so David, the White House, by the way, is going to continue. They are continuing to hand out these subsidies despite the one court ruling. Of course, I mentioned the other court ruled just the opposite. Break it down for us. What happened? Why did it happen? What does it mean?
Well, you're not surprised that the administration is going forward with the subsidies despite the court ruling, are you, Rick?
I am not.
I mean, not this administration.
That's
okay.
Right.
Basically, the D.C. Circuit Court ruled that the premium subsidies cannot go to federal exchanges. The law states that they are only eligible to people who get insurance through state exchanges. And then what the D.C. Circuit Court tried to do is say, well, was this an oversight in the law? Did Congress actually intend for subsidies to go to both types of exchanges? And they looked at the evidence and they couldn't find any. Now, I don't doubt for a second that if you had asked every Democrat at the time, should these subsidies go also to federal exchanges, they would all say yes. But that's hypothetical, and courts can't, or at least are not supposed to deal in hypotheticals. They actually have to deal with evidence. Now, interestingly, the Fourth Circuit Court also said that they could find no evidence on congressional intent. But what the Fourth Circuit did is basically looked at the overall policy goals of the law, which is to expand insurance coverage, and then basically did this kind of technical legal maneuver called a Chevron deference, in which they basically said, well, was the IRS's ruling on this to allow subsidies to go to the federal exchanges, was that reasonable? And if we can say that it's reasonable, we will defer to the IRS on this. And that's basically what they did. The one problem with that is that Chevron deference requires the statute to be vague before you can defer to, the court can defer to the regulatory agency. In this case, though, the statute's not really that vague. It plainly states that, subsidies are only available on state exchanges. Now, what it means from here, it's kind of hard to say. It's certainly got a lot of Obamacare supporters feeling very threatened and up in arms and making all sorts of outrageous accusations that this type of lawsuit is almost criminal. From here, though, I think it will eventually wind up in the Supreme Court, and what happens there, who knows? I'll admit I'm not that optimistic. I suspect that based on previous history, I suspect that John Roberts will probably join with the 4 liberal justices and side with the Fourth Circuit Court on this, unfortunately.
And
so,
as you say,
repeal Obamacare, we're going to have to look elsewhere.
And okay, well, that's an important point. I'm glad you snuck that comment in there. It's a very important comment. As you say, courts are not supposed to try and guess as to intent. But as you also point out, that if you ask any congressional Democrat what they felt, if they felt whether or not this would be covered on the federal exchanges, they would have said yes. So from what I'm hearing, it's hard to argue against the court that ruled in favor of the White House.
No, I actually think it's pretty hard to argue against the court that ruled against the White House. I mean, I think the statute is explicit, and there is just no evidence of what Congress intended with regard to subsidies going to federal exchanges versus state exchanges. I think the D.C. Circuit Court had the better argument here. I just don't think the Supreme Court is going to want the headache of saying, these millions of people who've gotten subsidies through the federal exchanges, right, we're going to say no, and so they're going to sort of split the baby in half, kind of like they did with the individual mandate case.
David, final question on this. Obamacare supporters are saying that this ruling, these 2 rulings, have nothing to do with substance. It is only wording that is being questioned here. Would you agree with that?
Well, I'm not exactly sure what the difference is here. I mean, the substance of this law comes from the wording of the law.
Yeah.
And if the wording says that subsidies are only supposed to go to state exchanges, well, then that should determine the substance of how the subsidies are managed.
All right, I agree with you. They're one and the same in this case. All right, switching gears, it's real important here. We're down less than a minute or two, but I want to get this in. Crony capitalism. You know, the left in America today is no friend of capitalism, yet they seem to be a friend of, they appear to be a friend of crony capitalism. The White House is paying what I call bribes to the insurance industry to incentivize them from holding off increasing premiums until on Obamacare, on health insurance, until after the 2014 November elections. We've been covering it all week. I would like to get your take on this.
Well, I think that's to a large degree what they're doing. What they're basically saying is that the risk corridors, which are supposed to help insurers that take losses on the exchange, taxpayer money can go toward that if there are more losers, insurers that are losers than winners on the exchange, but that money has to be authorized by Congress. It's not automatic spending under the law. But the White House has issued, or the administration has issued regulations that are at best kind of vague and really suggest that they're willing to look for, if Congress doesn't authorize the money, they're willing to look for other funds to help basically bail out the insurers. And this is to keep premiums down. Insurers will come out with their premiums for next year in late summer, early fall, and if premiums have gone way up, well, you're probably going to have a lot of voters who are going to be very cranky come November, and that's something that the administration definitely wants to avoid.
Do you agree this is crony Do you agree this is crony capitalism?
Oh,
Go ahead.
Oh, I absolutely. I mean, it's crony capitalism in the sense that it helps the insurers, that it gives more money to them, and it benefits the benefits politicians who want to win elections. So that is very much the definition of crony capitalism.
That's right. So sure. Those on the left can decry capitalism all they want until they need to cut deals with those in business to satisfy their own political needs. It's wrong. It's disgusting. And David Hogberg, we appreciate you coming on so we could expose it. All right.